Welcome to Decades of Horror, the classic era.
I don't smoke, but I always have matches with me. I find they frequently come in handy.
This is episode 179, recorded June 9th, 2024.
Gruesome Magazine.
I don't have any. I got matches. Can I borrow a cigarette? No, I don't have any. All right. I am your host, Jeff Mohr. On this podcast, we cover the good, the bad, and maybe even the ugly horror films released since the beginning of time through 1969. In each episode, we discuss the monsters, spirits, psychos, and villains that have haunted movie-going audiences since the dawn of film history. I don't know why I do that, but it's with me this week.
People what they want
are my incredible co-ghosts. Not Chad Hunt, who has had a bit of an emergency, and so hopefully he'll be back next episode. Not Doc Rotten, who also had a bit of emergency. Not the same one. I told him there was easier ways to get out of the podcast, but okay, that's cool. But Daphne,
Yay!
who is awesome, stupendous, and likable hell. How are you doing, Daphne?
I'm doing really good, and it's very great to be back with you guys. And the Gregory's here and Mikey Z. That's just lovely.
Yeah. So also joining us is Mikey Z, aka Whitebeard. And in fact, I'll save this comment for later. How you doing, Mikey? On short notice,
very well, Jeff. Thank you.
Stepped up.
I'm glad to
Appreciate
see
it.
Daphne and Gregory and you.
And also Gregory Crosby.
Yes.
Showed up on short notice.
It's a short film, easily watched in the window in which I needed to watch it again.
I always pick people that can have a lot to say without saying a whole lot. So that didn't come out.
That is me to a T.
It's close. It's close.
Babble on without any substance. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And also, Decades of Horror and Gruesome Magazine are partnering with Play Now Media on several of their channels. And in fact, the Classic Era is on their Classic Sci-Fi Movie channel, the Classic Horror Movie channel, and the Wicked Horror TV channel. Great stuff. You can check them out there. It's right now you can they're in the process of changing their model, so I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but right now you can subscribe without paying anything, and you can watch a bunch of stuff for with ads, and there's some premium content you wouldn't be able to see. If you pay the monthly fee, then you get to watch anything that's on that channel, no ads. So check it out. We find quite a bit of stuff there. And in fact, the movie we're doing today is on, I think it's on both of them, Classic Horror Movie Channel and Wicked Horror TV channel.
Every time I hear the Wicked Horror TV channel, I just think it must be set in Boston because it's wicked. It's Wicked Horror. Wicked Horror. That's why Wicked Horror. That's where I watched this film today. So Wicked Horror, yes.
Okay, cool. Well, check them out. On this podcast,
Sorry,
we start by giving some basic details of the film we are covering, followed by each of our first impressions of the movie, then some taglines that the marketers of this movie thought would help put some butts in the seat, and then we move on to a general discussion of whatever trips our trigger or floats our boat, or any other generic phrase I can come up with. Hopefully it has something to do with the film. Our last 80s, or what did we just do? 70s? Yeah, our 70s, we talked about everything. It was weird. So anyway, but today the topic is Bluebeard from 1944, directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, written by Pierre Gendron, a screenplay from a story by Arnold Lipp as Arnold Phillips and Werner H. Furst. The cast includes John Carradine, Gene Parker, Nils Astor, Ludwig Stossel, Tila Loring, Sonia Sorrell, George Pembroke, Henry Coker, and Emmett Lynn. This is a production of Producers Releasing Corporation, or PRC, which defined the concept of Poverty Row. Producers, it was filmed in 19 days beginning May 31st, and we will discuss this because there are several different pieces of information relating to this, but that's actually rather long for an Ulmer movie. Release date, 24th of October 1944, must have premiered in Oakland, and then a wider release on November 11th, 1944. And the synopsis: in Paris, an artist hires portrait models, and after he finishes their portrait, he strangles them. That's kind of the basis.
Kinda, yeah.
You would think painting would be a good enough outlet, but yeah.
So this picture here is a poster that makes frequent appearances in the movie. Warning, citizens of Paris, a murderer is in your midst. A criminal who strangles young women. Any person having information concerning this Bluebeard, please communicate with the police at once. And that was posted by the prefect of police.
You have to admire the fact that this has nothing to do with the actual Bluebeard legend whatsoever. Bluebeard is merely a euphemism for a crazed killer.
Well, the original legend, though, he did kill his wives, didn't he?
His wives, yes, but these are not. Yes,
these are not his.
This
wives.
is a very. This is very. The only thing way in which this movie shares with the original Bluebeard legend is that a lot of young women die at the hands of a man who is not only does he not have a blue beard, is his beard not blue, he doesn't have a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, we do need to make an observation before one of our listeners or watchers, viewers does.
Yes.
That there are 3 whitebeards reviewing Bluebeard. Who has no beard at all.
Right.
Well, thanks for the short notice. I did not have time to dye my beard.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing, Gregory, but yeah.
Although how that would have been very disturbing for Daphne to be surrounded by 3 Bluebeards.
I do have blueberries here. I can smudge them in my beard, possibly, for a quick fix. But
are any of you wearing a cravat? That would probably worry me as well.
Daphne, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I'm the only person on this podcast who owns a cravat.
I think that's good.
It's not. Bet. I don't. So
I definitely don't. But Nick might own a cravat.
I may in fact own more
very
than
obscure.
I may own more than one cravat, or I have to be honest. I think they're just ascots. I don't think I can get away with saying cravats.
Yeah,
my apologies. I was trying to put one over on the general public, but no.
Yeah, we're gonna get letters.
I have ascots, no cravats.
Right. They're gonna demand proof. They want proof.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get to first impressions, and since this was my pick, I'm going to go first. And I've been thinking about doing this movie for a long time. And every time I think we've done 14 movies that had John Carradine in the cast. I'm not entirely certain I have that correct.
Only 14?
Quick perusal. Of his 400 plus credits. And most of them, he plays a bit part. One of the exceptions is Dracula versus Billy the Kid, or Billy the Kid versus Dracula. And this one, he and House of Dracula. I mean, he's a title character in House of Dracula, but this is one where he really carries the movie. He's the guy. So I really wanted to do this. I'd seen this. I know I saw it before, but I re-watched it a few years ago and thought we have to do this. And of course, as I was getting ready, put this on the schedule. Magically, an ad came on Facebook and told me that Kino Lorber had a new Blu-ray out of this. So it's always listening, I'm telling you. So I have that as well. I think this is first off, I love Edgar G. Ulmer. The main reason I picked it was John Carradine, but Edgar G. Ulmer, I think, is underrated, and he has. I kind of like his backstory because he ended up doing what he wanted to do, I think. So Carradine's great. The women are great. Cinematography, there's kind of a ringer in there too. And set design is Ulmer. And I actually saw a quote under his trivia. You know, we did Beyond the Time Barrier a few months ago, and we kept talking about the inverted pyramids. And there's a piece of trivia that says noted for geometric shapes in this movie. So, yep. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much more because I there's so much I love about this movie. I want to hear what you all have to say. So Daphne, I'm going with the guests first, and check out see what Mikey Z has to say.
Oh wow, putting me on the spot. Okay. Well, initially, I had heard about this film. I had never seen it until maybe a couple of months ago. Started watching it and couldn't make it through it. I think I got as far as the opera scene, the puppetry scene in the beginning, and that's when I
That's not very far.
It's maybe 2 or 3 minutes into the film. Couldn't make it. And then by happenstance, I watched it again maybe a month ago. And I really enjoyed this film. I think Carradine, this may be his best performance ever. He doesn't overplay it like he does in a lot of his roles, and he's quite compelling in it. And my second favorite performance is Ludwig Stossel. I thought he was just a bee's knees. I thought he was fantastic.
Was that Hitler's Maniac or
Hitler's Madman?
Hitler's Madman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I thought he was fantastic in this. And I'm going to leave it at that and let the next person go.
All righty. Gregory. What say you?
I think I saw this for the first time 10,000 years ago. So it's good that I watched it again just about an hour and a half ago. And I'm always have been a fan of Edgar G. Ulmer, who seems to have this, whose career is, he's somewhere on this strange continuum between like Orson Welles and Ed Wood, where there was so much struggle and frustration because of the way his career unfolded. And yet he managed to make all of this, even the films that don't work, they're all interesting for the most part. Even Beyond the Time Barrier, you know, they all have something about them that makes them, you know, and sometimes they're really great. I'm going to point out the worst thing about this movie right off the bat and get it out of the way, so I can talk about all of the things I like about this movie and that make this movie a lot of fun. The music in this film is wholly inappropriate in nearly every instance, and it is constant. There is never a moment of silence, no matter what is happening on screen throughout this film. It recycles a whole bunch of clearly poverty row classical choices in its soundtrack. I would love for someone to someday do a new version of this, a restored version of this, where they just strip all the music out. Think about some of those scenes with no music under them, especially when Carradine, at the end, when Carradine is revealing why he has become the murderous serial killer that he's become. It would be 10,000 times more effective. I agree. This is probably one of Carradine's best performances. It's one of those performances that reminds you that it's a shame that he wasn't allowed to carry more movies and have larger roles. You know, and I mean, he's in, you know, so many horror films and is always such a welcome presence, no matter how bad the movie or whatever character he's given. But you see a film like this, or you think back to like you know, his performance famously in Stagecoach, right? And you just remember that, oh right, John Carradine could be really not just a good actor, but just had this fascinating look and presence on screen, and he looks great in this movie. I would have loved to just see. Let's just see a whole series of dissatisfied, bitter, disillusioned bohemian artists all played by John Carradine, because he just has that, just down. The only other thing I'll say at this point, the real sort of standout for me this time, that I'd forgotten from the 10,000 years ago that I first saw this, is Jean Parker. Jean Parker is marvelous in this. She'd worked with Ulmer at least once before. She has real charisma, and with that moment when he says, "You're so charming," it's like, I was thinking to myself, yeah, Jean Parker is super charming. You totally buy whatever weird little connection there is between them. And she's interesting. The way she's just so like, oh, Bluebeard? Oh, I wasn't really paying attention. What's that? It's a great little performance and character, which makes the final, what happens at the end of the movie, all the more effective and poignant, because there's some kind of real thing happening there. It's not the sort of artificial, well, these characters are supposed to be something happening here that you see so often, especially in not just in 40s movies, but any number of movies. So that was the real sort of discovery this time, was, hey, yeah, Jean Parker. She's marvelous, I think. And I'll stop there and let Daphne tell us what she thinks.
Yeah. Thank you, Gregory. Daphne, did you see this before?
Nope, I hadn't, but it was on my radar because I remember you talking about it, Jeff. Like when the first time you saw it, you said I remember you saying it was actually pretty good, and I was like, but never actually went much further than that. But I kind of like what everybody else said. The strongest reaction I had to it was just how darn good John Carradine was as an actor. You guys have kind of mentioned it. I'm used to him as a B actor, kind of or B movie actor, over the top, kind of the patriarch of this acting family. And to see him in this role, I was so impressed and like kind of blown away with like, wow, John Carradine was a really good actor. And when I looked into it a little bit, I learned a little bit about how he early on was considered a very, very good actor, with John Ford and stuff. And but I only knew him as the horror movie guy, But so that was really great, and it really made me want to go back and rewatch Grapes of Wrath, and reread Grapes of Wrath. But so that's really what kind of stuck with me, and I kind of was thinking about that for a few days afterwards. And then also Lucille, the character Lucille, the Jean Parker, I just thought she was great, and it was so one of the things that I've with being in this podcast and kind of watching pre-code, and not necessarily pre-code, but later movies, is seeing that there are some movies have really strong female characters and really excellent actors who I was really struck with how independent Lucille was. It was totally authentic feeling. Her kind of I can only think of independent, but she wasn't scared, or she just was confident and open to people, and just felt like a real human character that I could admire or really be drawn to. So I just thought that was really great. I felt really happy to watch this old movie that I never had seen before. I might never have seen if I hadn't heard about it, or we weren't going to talk about it. And I think it's really good.
Yeah, and her sister was also the same kind of character.
Yep.
You actually believe that those were sisters, and they clearly come from a family that had raised two strong, absolutely independent, women making their way in the world.
Right.
I loved how all the police officers' sister completely deferred to her sister.
Right.
As being this sort of like, it was just like for a moment I was like, wait, who's this character? What?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was marvelous, and it felt very real and very very not typical 40s heroine. Sort of, vibe.
And I like that they didn't draw a lot of attention to it. It was just, Francine, she's
that's Francine.
She's a police detective or whatever she was, undercover.
She's the one who comes up with the plan.
Yeah. Well, she's like, they're equal when she comes back. They're just, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So and the way that it wasn't made a big deal, it was just like, there was no story explaining how she got there, why she would be in this role. Just this was what she.
The police inspector isn't like, oh, this might be too dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
Put you in, and no.
I know.
It's like
that's like
Sergeant Pepper 100 years earlier, or whatever the duration of time was.
Yeah. Great.
So.
All right. Well, now it's time for a little segment we do. Called Taglines with Chad.
You're going to have to get Chad to draw versions of that for everybody.
Everybody, exactly.
Standing in for Chad today is Mikey Z, a.k.a. Whitebeard.
One of the many white beards here, yes. Okay, here we go, folks. Terror strikes.
Okay.
Pretty, physically has
lame.
A physical presence.
Yeah, pretty lame. Okay, here we go. Here's a better one. Maybe not. Depends on how I, state this. Should he kill her or should he love her?
Love. You want to love.
Such decisions. Yeah.
You, the viewer, decide.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like a William Castle flick.
Yeah.
You decide. Don Juan by day, killer by night.
Yeah, so not a Don Juan, unless
Take
by Don
that
Juan
one.
you mean a guy who runs a puppet show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The most sinister love story. The most sinister love story ever told.
That's kind of sinister.
I don't know about that, but okay. Why not?
I'm thinking about they always use these superlatives, and it just wouldn't sound right to say one of the pretty good love stories.
One of the mildly disturbing love stories.
Yeah,
Right, exactly, yeah.
Not the most, but pretty sinister.
It was kind of sinister. A kind of sinister love story.
To love him meant death.
And that was literally in caps and underlined death on the.
I mean, at least that's accurate, especially for his.
Renee.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Renee.
Yes.
The
Renee.
Yeah, beginning.
Or Renee. Yes. Loving him meant death for every woman. And I am not going to try to read
sure
the
what
German.
that means.
I'm sorry.
That was on the German.
In zu lieben bettet für jede Frau den Tod.
Jeder.
I don't know.
Okay.
Take it away, Jeff.
Yeah, the first part right. All right. So, that's been Taglines with Chad, as played by Mikey Z.
I think I'm getting taglinitis.
Yeah. It's also funny that no matter what episode of Decades of Horror you're listening to, all I hear whenever taglines are read, I just hear like the pause before Bill or Crystal like just completely like eviscerates it somehow in my head. I can hear Crystal just go, yeah, no. Very funny.
She does. Well, let's take a look at some posters here. That's the one I see the most nowadays. I don't know if that was the one that was used the most or not.
That's a really good poster. It's just two colors.
Yeah, it's got
and everything
there.
Yeah, all the characters are there. They all look suitably what the hell. But I really like how Carradine looks in this. Carradine actually looks quite sinister on this poster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the background, looming.
Yeah, looming with a nice shadow behind him. It's great.
Yep. I got the 4 women down the side. Yeah. I like it. Well, here's a couple this same one only in a I think it's called a 3-sheeter. I'm not sure. Terror Strikes, there it is.
Yeah.
It was actually
I like how Stossel is very prominent on both these posters.
Yeah.
Well, and that bald head with the scowl.
Yeah.
And I
Red
just
hair
want to
and a gray beard, white beard. Yeah.
I would just like to point out just the lacy neckline of Jean Parker. Just want to note that at this particular poster.
Yes. I believe that's what's called foreshadowing, Daphne.
All up here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or now here he's using his hands, but
no cravat. Well, I think when he was killing her, he did use his hands, or when he was trying to strangle her.
Yes.
He used his hands.
Oh,
right?
her.
Or
Yeah.
Well, he did that with the other gentleman as well, Ludwig's character. Yeah.
After the
All right,
fabulous action sequence.
Here are the foreign films, and I believe. So once again, we have 4 women and Bluebeard. We've dropped Stossel in the top one, and I believe that's Dutch. Die Zaak doesn't quite fit with French, I don't think. Case of, and that's what this other L'Affaire Barbe Bleu.
Colors in the French one are much better, more lurid as you want.
Yeah,
the top one's a little faded. You can't, but definitely lurid. French, we have kind of a radiant pink / magenta and the green. Oh, and she's
green. Yeah.
Did she have a dress with a checkerboard on it?
I think she did at the puppet show.
Okay. So yeah, those are okay.
I like the French one. And it's I don't know, perhaps garish, but I like it.
Well, that's got 4 women and Lucille with the inspector in the corner eyeing the proceedings, and it looks like he's using something.
Hard to tell.
Around his hands, I don't know. All right, and of course we must have the German one, that's pretty much the same, that one we saw where he's strangling.
But
there is one.
There's no lace.
Difference.
There's no lace. There's the lacy top there. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it looks great, but that's what I don't remember that costume.
No, I don't think that. I think it was a little too revealing for 1944.
Now, this is the German poster, so it makes sense that Stossel is huge.
Yes.
On this poster.
He's the biggest head on the poster.
Yeah. So initially you're like, wait a minute, he's just, and it's like, oh, it's a German poster.
Yeah. And we've just dumped the other women. They're not as important as Stossel.
Right.
Clearly.
And she looks like Marjorie Main there. She doesn't look anything like Jean Arthur.
No.
That's a
Jean
good point.
Parker, excuse me. She looks like Marjorie Main. If anybody knows who Marjorie Main is.
I think he looks a little bit more like Jean Arthur than Jean Parker.
Mom Pa Kettle.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
And the Kino Lorber Blu-ray.
Yeah.
There's that To Love Him Meant Death.
Well, you got the paintbrushes there. That's a tie-in.
I would have gone with that first poster we looked at. I think for the
Yeah.
I'll be writing a stern email to Kino Lorber,
please.
So this I will warn people. I think it's a great Blu-ray. However, I don't think they had a lot to work with. So it isn't like you get sharp cut lines. It's just not what I think it's a good transfer of what they had to begin with. Yeah. There, as you go farther back on this, it's some pretty fuzzy stuff. And I think a lot of it was kind of shot that way. There's some foggy night scenes, a couple of them. And so
when I was joking about restoration, it suddenly occurred to me that there probably isn't a lot to work with.
Right.
If you did want to do a full restoration of this.
But the nice thing about it is it has 2 different commentary tracks. One of them has Gregory Mank, and one of them has David Del Val, who is also pretty well known. I've come to kind of enjoy his. They're usually of a more personal nature. A lot of times he does ones of people that he knew, and in this one he was friends with Shirley Ulmer, Edgar Ulmer's wife, and she had lots of stories about John Carradine and her husband. All right, that's it with the posters.
So
here's our lead man, and
yes.
So
I don't remember.
I don't think I actually wrote this out, but there was something about his hairdo. Like he actually, I can't remember if Shirley Ulmer told Del Val that or where it came from, but somewhere I heard that he had it, like curled to be, he wanted to be more of a ladies' man that way.
Well, but it's also more period appropriate to the time in which the film is set.
I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. So it works great.
That's kind of how I took it.
Those waves in the hair. Very bohemian. Yeah.
I mean, he looks like you could just pop, Delacroix underneath that mop of hair right there, and you'd be like, oh, sure, yeah.
So Loretta Francel was the hairstylist, and Milburn Morante was the makeup artist. But go ahead, Daphne.
I was just going to say he did such a good job of being charming and handsome, but cruel and cold. Just flip from one to the other in a totally believable and creepy way. That was had so much more kind of depth to it than it maybe could have been played by other people. And I just was really drawn to that and very, very impressed by that.
Think about how many times John Carradine is the absolute opposite of some kind of romantic or handsome or debonair sort of character in many of his roles that he was set with, to the point where you might not think that if your only experience of John Carradine is with later work, you might not think it's possible for him to play a role like this, and yet he's perfect in this role.
Yeah, he's perfect, and
pulls it off. Yeah,
and he is able to play that truly kind of that thing you hear about, like Ted Bundy and
the characteristics
really,
of a typical serial killer.
That's so you totally would. And you believe it, like even watching it, it's like when I was watching when he was talking about kind of what caused him to be this way, I was like, I want to feel sympathy for him, but I also know that he doesn't have any feelings, you know what I mean? But it's like he did that, so I'm not doing a very good job explaining it, but he did really good.
You really, when he explains that, it's just this horrible compulsion. He explains the whole story. Until the end, it's this horrible compulsion. You really feel like, oh man, this poor sick bastard.
Right.
And then he only switches into full on oh shit mode when she says, how did you think that the death of my sister that wouldn't somehow come between us?
Right.
And then he goes full on.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah.
Anything that threatens our happiness is a menace. And you're like, oh, there it is. There it is.
Well, and I thought even the fact that he was telling her that, I was like, why is he confessing? Is he going to confess this to her? And it's like, because he doesn't really.
Because he's delusional.
He doesn't care. You know, I mean, it's like.
Oh, he thinks he'll understand. I think.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, it's not something. I mean, I hide it because I have to, but it's not.
He thinks they're already there. It's a classic, it's the classic moment where it's like, oh, you think this is a date? Oh, no. This is not a. This is not a date.
But he did such a good job. Yeah. He just that I was so impressed with that. I think he did such a good job, and like I said, I really want to go and see more of the stuff he did when he was younger. Kind of educate myself more on that, because I really enjoyed him in this movie.
He's a pretty interesting character. John Barrymore was his idol. And in fact, I can't remember what it was. He was the one that, at his funeral, I think I can't remember if they did it at the funeral, if they carted the body somewhere. And
there's that classic
poured a bunch of booze in his mouth.
I think it was Errol Flynn and some other people. That David Niven might have been involved. They stole Barrymore's body and took it to like a bar. And
Weekend with Barrymore.
Yeah, right. It was right, and they had him slumped over the bar, and bartender said, "Hey, buddy, time to leave," and he pushed him down. Him being already dead, that was their big joke, saying, "You killed him! You killed him!" Oh, old Hollywood and their shenanigans.
You can totally see that in a lot of when when Carradine is being more hammy than not, you can totally see the Barrymore in his.
Well, he was doing. He had his own Shakespeare troupe for a few short years, right in this time period, and the list of wherever he went, he did multiple different. They traveled up and down the coast and did several different plays, right? So you could definitely see that.
Well, there were the stories of Barrymore walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard reciting Shakespeare at full intonation, throughout the day, and people would look at him like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? But, that was him. That was his shtick, as they say.
So this picture here on the top, we've got, I believe is that the Faust puppet?
Yes.
From the
performance
marionette opera.
Yeah, and now I know why Chad is not on this episode, by the way. Because that seemed to go on forever and ever and ever.
I enjoyed it, but I know what you're saying.
I liked it too, and I actually timed it. It's about 4.5 minutes.
Seemed like 4.5 hours.
All the rest of the. So why did they spend 4.5 minutes doing that?
Well, the best part of that, it was not the actual. It was fine. I actually liked that.
The
puppetry was great. I think Ulmer spent enough time on that to sort of establish the fascination that Lucille's going to have with the puppets and with the whole setup of her. Like, oh, would you like to design some costumes?
Yeah.
But the thing that I loved most about that is when Carradine looks into the audience to see if he can see Lucille, and instead of the close-up of his eye looking,
I think I called it the magic
his entire face is somehow, and it was one of those moments where it's just that's a rare sort of moment where you're like, Ulmer, what are you doing? What is
it's a magic peephole, I believe I called it.
That was funny.
It should have just been Carradine's eye.
And he's looking away from the keyhole.
Yeah. It's very funny.
Yeah. That was funny. That was really good.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of the marionettes, if anybody's interested, and they were the
very good
Barlow and Baker marionettes. Yeah. So I'm sure they're the ones there. I actually kind of bought Carradine singing the Mephistopheles part, which is another, good point. Carradine plays Mephistopheles in the, or his character Gaston Morel plays.
Could have been called Jerry Anderson. For all we know.
But I did not buy Emmett Lynn as Le Soldat doing the other singing voice.
Right.
But okay. And I thought the reason they put that whole thing in there is when they come to the end of that scene, there's this big heartfelt crescendo.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
the fire comes up.
Lucille has eyes coming, tears rolling down her eyes. She's so moved by it. So that she was already taken with the man.
Yeah, it sets up her fascination with him.
Yep.
And you get
And then he had to go out and collect the tips, let's say.
Yeah.
What his agenda was.
Right. Yeah. The other woman was like, "Oh, you're right. Yeah, he's gonna go out and get the money."
We'll get back to the puppets. Because they do make their appearance later on in some really
I
cool
thought that was a disturbing scene actually later on.
So here is
she's great.
She plays Lucille Lutin.
Again, the hair just
and she's what is her job?
Modeste.
She's a Modeste.
I was going to let Daphne say that.
Oh, you guys got it.
Modeste.
Modeste. But here's you know what else was great about
word
that?
I never heard before this movie, and so I
had to look it up. Yeah,
this is a Hollywood movie made in 1944, and they don't explain what that means. How many movies set in France that had just how many movies set in the 40s where somebody says some character, talks about something that's completely obscure, then you have, exposition like, oh, you mean a blah, 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 right? To explain it to the audience. In this instance, I was waiting. I was in there waiting, like, oh, who's going to say what exactly that is somehow in a way that no real human being would say? It's just for exposition, and nobody does. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she was modest about being a modiste. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you went there instead of me. Thank you.
So she was good. I dug the. I didn't. I was going to put up a picture of all the women standing there, but these hairdos were quite voluminous and quite curly.
You look at her filmography, and there's very few. She got to be work with some. She was in a Capra film early on in the 30s, early in her career. She worked with a few, like, oh, okay, I've heard of that. And then it's just all these films that you've never heard of. And then she retires after the mid-50s. She lived to be 90. Until 2005, having retired 50 years earlier.
So she was in, Mikey, I think you just posted about watching one of the Inner Sanctum movies.
I just posted about Calling Dr. Death.
Yeah. Well, the third one of these movies, Dead Man's Eyes, she is the female lead.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay.
The third out of 6 of those, all starring Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah. Those are good little features.
They are.
They are. They're not too long.
And,
like an hour. But,
she was in one called One Body Too Many with Bela Lugosi. Both of those were 1944, along with this one. So
early on, she was in Little Women.
Yes,
I read that, and I wanted to see that too, because I was thinking, oh God, she was great. I'd want to see her in more stuff, and then, with her not being in much more.
Yeah, she's in Gabriel Over the White House, which is a very interesting sort of fantasy from the early 30s. Fantasy film. She's in Frank Capra movie Lady for a Day. She's in Little Women, and then there's just not just a lot of things.
She has a little bit of a Lucille Ball look about her.
Yes. Yeah.
Her facial features and her bone structure. She looks a lot like Lucille Ball in my eyes.
And then she was in Ulmer's Tomorrow We Live in 1942 before this. So
she's excellent in this, and she plays the full range. She's
right.
She's the boss, right, in the dress shop, modiste shop, whatever that is, and she's fitting people, and then she's the emotional one at the marionette opera, and there's the and then she's torn about, she doesn't want to believe that he's the killer.
Yeah, I think I put in the notes at that point. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. Yeah.
So,
and she doesn't do any of that with any kind of over-the-top hysterics.
No.
It's very much all in her face.
Yeah.
Very, very well.
It is.
Yeah.
She has to know for herself.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good. She's great.
So this Nils Astor is sort of.
I was thinking Charles Boyer. I'm sorry, but that's all that entered my head watching him was Charles Boyer.
I think they called him. Somebody called him the male Greta Garbo.
No,
sort of exotic, kind of pretty. But his career.
Well, that was just because. But is that just because he was Swedish, right? Is that the only reason that they?
It might have been, and he has a little bit of an exotic look.
I think he was actually friends with Garbo, if I'm not.
Yes, he asked her to marry him.
Right. If I'm remembering it rightly, he was also Swedish, there in Hollywood, and was one of Garbo's many paramours.
There's a line in his bio that says his career went downhill, and by 1958 he was driving trucks. Maybe he enjoyed driving. I don't know. No offense on
he's fine in this.
He's fine. I kept thinking Charles Boyer. I'm sorry. I just couldn't get it past me.
The only genre thing I could find that he was in was The Night Monster.
Oh, was he in that also? Okay.
1942 with Lugosi and Atwill.
Wow.
But that brings us to Le Marte.
There he is. Good old Ludwig.
And the classic Edgar G. Ulmer technique of casting a intense spot on the eyes or face of an actor while shrouded in darkness that is used to such excellent effect in, of course, 1946's Detour. So every time there's a flashback, the spot comes in. Yeah,
I think the thing that makes Detour so great is it wears its lack of budget on its sleeve, and it's still a great film. I mean, there's just it's amazing.
Yeah. Ludwig's beard brought to mind, to my mind at least, a line from Day at the Races. And don't point that thing at me; it may go off.
So I don't remember him. I wish I did, but they said he was well known in the '60s for playing the little old winemaker me in the Italian Swiss colony wine commercials. And he was a little old guy in like an alpine costume, and they'd say, "Who could produce such a great wine?" That little old winemaker me. He'd come on.
Must have been before Orson Welles went on his Paul Masson kick. Yeah.
The other great thing about his character is that this is here's the true villain of the movie,
right?
As is always the case. Yeah. You know, Carradine's character may be Gaston might be a serial killer, but he didn't start out wanting to be a serial killer.
Well, and he kind of knows that he's trying to stop, right?
He's trying to. Whereas this guy is just like, oh, it's like, you know, you really should stop killing these women after you paint them, but I need another painting. It's just
or you owe me a lot in rent.
Yeah,
you know, how are you going to pay me?
Like put him in the stain where the police will find him. You know, quit killing him.
During the final sting, I'm going to call it, they were offering him, what was it, 200,000 francs, and he was offering Carradine's character like 25,000.
No, that was a nice touch. Yeah. Also, when he's when his monologue at the end, it was just a perfect moment. The way Carradine says, "There was no money in puppets."
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I turned to puppets to try to get away from painting. There was no money in puppets.
There's no money in puppets. Yeah.
I feel your pain, Gaston.
So
I have to.
There's no money. There's no money in poetry either. But I
have to evoke Jerry Anderson. He made a good buck off of puppets. So
yeah, I'm going to say that some there's more money in puppets than poetry.
Yeah, Jim Henson, another one. Yeah,
exactly. Jerry Anderson did very well.
So he was born in Austria and fled Austria in 1938 or 39 after the German invasion, as the Germans invaded, or the Nazis. Went to UK for a while, ended up in the US. He was in a film called Manhunt in 1941, which this is bizarre how this happened.
Is that the Fritz Lang film?
Yes. With Walter Pidgeon.
Yep. Good movie.
So I'm in like junior high or something, get my little Scholastic book sheet out and see a book called Rogue Male. And I'm thinking that sounds kind of cool. You know, I read the synopsis. And so I ordered it and read it. And then somewhere along the line over the years, I saw Manhunt and the synopsis of it and went, boy, that sounds a lot like Rogue Male. And
sure enough.
Sure enough, it was. So
have you seen the Peter O'Toole Rogue Male, the other adaptation of Rogue Male?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I have to check that out.
That would be interesting for comparison's sake. As I recall, it's pretty good.
Well, I just like the whole idea. It was a guy that was going to assassinate Hitler at the beginning of the war. And he chokes a little bit. And the Germans catch him, or they see what he was planning, and the whole rest of the book is him trying to escape, pretty much.
It's a much more serious, most dangerous game where they're hunting him. You know.
Yes. So he was in that. Stossel was also in House of Dracula, 1945.
Dracula, yes, yeah.
A mouse.
Also with John Carradine, yeah. But they didn't have. I don't think they had scenes together though.
He was in From the Earth to the Moon in 1958.
And I believe he was in an Abbott and Costello film called Who Done It. I think he had a small part.
Possibly, you know. I was thinking this, and I didn't. One of the women here, and I think it was Jean Parker. Yeah, she was in Flying Deuces with Laurel and Hardy.
Oh,
I just want to point out that when Mikey just said Abbott and Costello, Who Done It, I restrained myself from making some kind of what done it. I didn't actually make
good
that joke,
because I would have never caught up on it.
and I just wanted to be acknowledged that I showed some restraint during this episode.
You were very strong.
It wasn't my intention to leave an opening there, but
it was a good opening. It was a good opening, Mikey. Thank you. But I refuse to walk through that door.
So a quick back to Jean Parker. She played in Laurel and Hardy's Flying Deuces and was, I think she was Hardy's, Hardy proposed to her. And then a few years later, she was in a Laurel and Hardy movie and she played his daughter.
Well, that's Hollywood.
Anyway. All right. Stossel. God, what an evil character.
Yeah.
What a great performance, though.
Yep. So good.
All you had to do was dangle money in front of him, and all of a sudden, I don't know him. I can't get in touch with him because
perfectly slimy.
Yeah.
How much money do you have? But he gets his just desserts.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Even gets, not only does he get strangled by Carradine, he gets tossed over a desk.
Right, and I thought Carradine was playing Action Jackson there, the way he leapt over that desk. I mean, I don't believe that was a stuntman. I think that was Carradine.
He had some pretty active strangulations. So this is Sonia Sorrell, who was married to John Carradine.
Yeah, and there's that great, there's that technique again.
Yeah,
Yep.
And it's particularly effective because she's got great eyes. That early on, when she's watching Gaston talk to Lucille, and you just can feel the radiating off of her.
Yeah.
Very good. Great face.
And how she was like, "I've always loved you," or I don't remember exactly what she said, but like she would always love. She couldn't help herself, But
you would disappear and then you'd come back to me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
He was like, I didn't ask you to fall in love with me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was. I thought she was good. She does a good job of, seeing how she's fuming back behind the stage because she sees John Carradine's character go out and.
I think every performance in this is a cut above the usual Poverty Row. Honestly,
she did really good, and I also, she definitely, you could tell all the stuff that was going on kind of behind her eyes and stuff. But I also like how she was kind of key in seeing that other side of Carradine. I mean, you start seeing it when he goes to that older guy who does the singing, and so easily they talk to each other about getting the other woman, bringing her to him, which was so creepy. Yeah. And then they have this conversation about, her as well. And he goes to her, and then you see the side of Gaston, this horrible guy who doesn't care about who he's hurting or who he's using.
Typical artist.
Like, you see it. You start seeing the two sides of him, and
he doesn't waste much time with that. She's actually gone pretty quick.
I thought there was an interesting editing choice that when he's about to dispose of her, let's say, he reaches for the cravat, but she screams first, and then he reaches for the cravat. It's like she knew what the cravat meant,
Yeah. Well, she knew what he
Yeah.
She knew what he has been doing. Because she even says something.
Yeah, right.
The girls. What about the girls?
Yeah, apparently she's been there.
Yeah.
As he went through.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if she doesn't know that he's murdered them, she knows that something is up.
Yeah.
The fact that he paints all these women and then they just vanish.
Something is up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's been there. She's loved him. She can't leave him. Yeah.
So they were married from 1945 to 1957 and had 3 children, Robert and Keith Carradine.
Yes.
And architect Chris Carradine. And that made her the stepmother of Bruce Carradine and David Carradine.
Yep. It occurs to me when I was earlier saying about it would have been great to see Carradine playing all of these tortured, artistic, bohemian characters. Actually, Keith Carradine got to do all those roles. His son got to do those types of roles, like in Nashville and whatnot, where he got to be the tortured artist and in the moderns and things. So I suddenly realized that I was like, oh, well, Keith got to do those, even if his father
wasn't. Wasn't David in the Woody Guthrie movie?
The Guthrie, Bound for Glory.
Yeah,
is the name of the film. Yeah.
I mean, it's no Death Race 2000, but yes, he was in Bound for Glory. That's correct.
I always
exactly.
David Carradine. I suppose it started with Kung Fu.
Of course, Grasshopper. I got to say, I love David. I actually wrote a poem, and I wrote an elegy for David Carradine after he died. Sometimes I'll write poems about the oddest things. I wrote a poem, an elegy for Russ Meyer of all people. I wrote an elegy for Adam West. Did you see how I just worked in a Batman reference into the episode?
There we go.
There you go.
Chad's not here.
It's been a long time working a Batman. But yeah, I remember when David Carradine died, I remember thinking, my God, all of those iconic roles that he just had that almost Keaton-esque stone face through, starting with things like, Kung Fu and just that whole absolute calm he had in just nearly every role.
Well, it's interesting. His later career sort of mirrored his father's career, where he just took anything and everything and basically played the same
until Kill Bill.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, John Carradine got shockwaves, whereas
Frankenstein.
David Carradine got Kill Bill.
Right.
In fact, that's going to be my recurring Frankenstein Island connection every podcast. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another Batman connection. All this is like degrees of connection.
God, I'm so sorry.
Gene Parker was married to Robert Lowry, who played Batman in the Batman serial.
Wow.
All right, that's a reach, but what?
That's going back.
I didn't plan that. It just came out. I had to go.
See, it was meant to be.
I might have Stossel might have been in a 66 Batman episode if we do some deep diving.
I don't know why, but so this is Tila Loring, who plays Lucille's sister Francine, who works for the police, and serves as bait to a certain extent. I don't know why, but I love that shot of her with the tassel curl sticking into the wardrobe screen.
Yeah, it's charming. That whole scene is really charming. And then it's really nice because she, and this is one of the really nice touches, because she glimpsed over the top of it and saw Gaston.
Yes.
When he reveals himself, she's like, oh
yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a great moment.
Really worked well.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing.
How easy it would have been for her to have not seen him at all and just been like, oh, I'm just behind this. Yeah.
Right.
Really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought she was really good too. She plays a very
good.
And she didn't take any crap,
Nope.
Her sister
not from her sister either. Yeah, that was great seeing their relationship too. That they clearly loved each other, and they were both super strong and supportive of each other. That you mentioned her hair, and I was, of course, I was just like, wow. I was looking at her hair and just like, what's going on here? What it made me think of that. Of course, spacing out on his name, but the clown in The Simpsons,
Krusty.
Yeah, a little bit like that. And but I was like, what is that? And then I was like, oh, later.
No, Sideshow Bob. I apologize. Sideshow Bob with the
Sideshow Bob. Yeah, that's right. Sideshow Bob. But and then when you see how her hair is done, it's like, oh, okay, I understand. Anyway, so super hair nerd costume thing where I'm like, what are the curls and why? What would you do with them? And how does that work? And then so anyway,
and it turned into this hairdo in the bottom somehow,
it turned it, but then I saw, oh yeah, I see they pinned him up there, so that's where my mind was.
That leaves an opening to Frankenstein Island. Actually, if you look at Sheila Frankenstein, she has some sort of thing going on in the back of her head.
She also pinned it, right?
It's a real reach, Mikey. That is a real.
I told you I have to get one in every podcast.
Well, we've mentioned Frankenstein Island twice already, which maybe
it's bad enough.
He's banking one.
Yeah.
I'm not mentioning that other film, Jeff. I won't do it.
So.
Oh, what you mean? This is Swarm?
I didn't say it.
Okay, sorry. I just had.
This is gonna get cut. I know this is gonna get cut. Okay.
Yeah.
So the stop picture is like the closest thing to sort of a extras cast shot. We've got the inspector Nils Astor leaning on the desk, and Tila Loring sitting there, and I think his name was Renaud, who is George Pembroke,
who also is directly from the Bronx. It felt like there's that one scene where he has that line. Like it was just like, that man is not French, ladies and gentlemen.
A lot of the accents here left a lot to be desired.
Not that it matters in a Hollywood movie from the 40s, but it was just sometimes it's just much more noticeable than others. We're just like, that man is not French,
right? And those people are not from South America,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Even if she does wear sort of a lace shawl and a hairpiece sticking up in the back. Now I can't find him. The other guy's name was Deschamps, but I don't see him in the credits. Oh, there he is. Henry Kolker.
Oh,
the guy on the far right. He's the one who plays her father.
Yeah.
Who's not very good at undercover work.
Yeah, very subtle with the match signaling.
Yeah.
Very subtle. Yes.
Yeah. He
had this every time something kind of threw him. He got this befuddled look on his face. And the bottom picture is when they're pulling Renee's body out of the scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I had a recall to the beginning of Murders in the Rue Mohr from 32.
Yeah.
Similar scenes where they were pulling bodies out of the Seine. I think it was the Seine as well.
Have you done the 32 Murders in the Rue Morgue?
We have not. It's
that should be slotted in. That's a really interesting,
really good. It's Robert Florey.
It's Robert Florey, and it's just there's a lot of really interesting stuff and a lot of kind of like, again, wonderful pre-code brutality that would not pass just a couple of years later.
Taboo subjects.
Yeah, it's really good.
It sits on the shelf behind me, waiting patiently.
I feel like we've talked about it before, but never.
Oh, we have. I mean,
but never.
I actually used it when I taught Murder on Stage and Screen years ago. That was one of the films that I would show to sort of connect things up with Poe and the creation of the detective story. Yeah, because it's Lugosi is just. It's another great underrated Lugosi gem.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, speaking of which, I kind of went over this, but I wanted to mention George Pembroke, the second guy from the left there, was in. He was in two pretty well-known serials, Adventures of Captain Marvel and Captain Midnight.
Oh, wow.
He was also in Black Dragons in 1942 with Lugosi and Invisible Ghost in 1941.
Lugosi. As many PRC actors were.
And I also left out for Tila Loring. This might be one of the best ones. She was in The Return of the Ape Man, also in 1944. that starred Lugosi, George Zucco, and John Carradine.
Yeah.
Same year.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I thought when they were pulling the bodies out, I thought that was a pretty gruesome scene too. I wonder if it would have been like an intense type of scene during that time, like if it was maybe more kind of gruesome that they
44.
were showing it. I don't know. I thought I definitely.
It was nice that they one of the very first shots is of the body floating in the water.
Yeah.
That's what's called establishing the tone.
Well,
but
but
that
also
reminded me of you said it. Oh, go ahead, Daphne.
Oh, I was just going to say also because the clothing is so clingy on the women's bodies as they're pulling them out of the water. I don't know, that it just seemed kind of risque and disturbing, but also kind of added to the this kind of what happened to them.
It has a reality. It has a reality to it that you're not going to get because they're not going to show you Carradine really strangling.
Right, but you see this, what's left of them. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and his whole method for disposing of bodies is just a matter of ease. He carries them out the back door down the steps to the river and just rolls them in.
Right.
Which I took to kind of be like essentially the sewer. I don't know if that's true or not, but I kind of felt like
it seemed like there was like when Ludwig Stossel's character was going to meet him, he walked through the canals, I'm going to call it, or it might have been the sewers.
He does.
And I was thinking of Phantom of the Opera.
Could have been worried.
Well. Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. It's the exact same fake pair of sewers that the Phantom of the Opera moves through, which must somehow, I'm sure it exists in some form that's close to that. What's odd though is that is this notion of like, oh yeah, just like the door at the bottom of the house.
Right.
Right into the
exactly.
Just come up and steps into it. It's not this thing that I have to. I mean, later on he does have to like go down a manhole cover to escape, but it seemed very it seemed very convenient. There's like, oh yeah, this chateau has a door to the kind of the upper sewers. Oh
yeah. Oh yeah. Or this is just where we dispose of the bodies. Very easy. You just take it down.
Well, it reminded me of Frenzy.
Frenzy, right?
Yeah. Seeing the body float at the scene, and then
I was thinking that as well when that opening shot.
Yeah. Speaking of a movie where you do get to see in graphic detail someone being strangled, that's the measure of the distance between these two films right there.
Yeah. But I think there's something about seeing the body as just like meat. And I think maybe it's something like that too, where it's just kind of this person is, now just left to float away like trash.
Well, I had to throw this guy in.
So good.
Sort of I don't know what you call this guy, less than Dot.
Another great character.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
so good, but so bad.
Like the comic relief almost. Yeah.
It's kind of a shame that he just disappears too, because he's not really. If Gaston's not doing puppet work, he's just sort of, off doing his own thing. But
I just took it
in good performance.
I just took him as like the survivor that just does what he has to do. So Gaston goes off, someone else, he'll find someone else to. But I really, the character was great. The character was great.
No, he's sort of involved in what Gaston is doing.
Oh yeah,
got a tie there somewhere.
Well, I think he's involved, but I don't think he knows really what any of it's going on, because this is like a different part from Gaston's life as a painter. I think what's great about this character is that this is the guy who probably does not care that there's not a lot of money in puppets.
Right. Yeah.
He's happy. He's happy to do the puppet shows and like that scene at the bottom there where when Gaston comes out, he says, "I'm going to do a new play." It's like, oh, and there's like actual like enthusiasm there for like, oh, we're going to switch it up. We're going to do something different from Faust, and great. There's like this sense of like he enjoys it, right? Whereas for Gaston, it's this thing that he's doing mostly so he can stop being a serial killer.
Well, I didn't see a lot of stuff I recognize in his credits, but it seems like he played a I did see where it said he played a prospector type in a lot of Republic westerns. You know, the old.
Diagnebbit.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact lines, but in that the image up top where it's like, we don't allow beggars, or something. He said, I'm here for a profession, but not my, my beggar role. I'm in this other role right now.
But he was kind of a great character. Gaston Morel uses him to run his errands and fetch his women, and and make sure she comes alone. And like he knows exactly what it's for.
Yeah. So they have,
but I felt like he knew he thought it was just because I'm just going to like have some,
could be
hanky time.
Yeah.
That was the impression I got. He thinks that this is just his whole sort of like, I don't think that's the one character who is not. I don't think he's paying enough attention to think that Gaston is disposing of these women.
Or even thought to think anymore about it.
Like in that scene, he doesn't even tell him that Renee's dead. He says, "Oh, she's gone," and he assumes like, "Oh, she took off." Yeah, c'est la vie.
Yeah, but it's so funny that you took it that way, because I somehow took it as, maybe he didn't know she was dead, but something happened.
I took it like, he knew that she was gone in the literal sense of gone, never coming back.
Oh wow, no,
I read that into the character, and he's like, okay, whatever, just another one.
Yeah, no, I took it much more to mean it was just like they come and they go. These women who help out.
And I think he said, so we'll be looking for another replacement.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem funny because I was thinking,
he just didn't strike me the kind of character who is like, oh yeah, I do things for my puppet boss sometimes, and he murders a lot of women, and we just always have to go. It just felt more like, oh yeah, people come and go.
Things for my puppet boss.
Yeah,
I love it. Oh,
I like that. I like that. I don't. It's one of the things where in a story like this, where you think like, oh, every character is somehow implicated in the hideous conspiracy, and it's not often the case. There's some people who are just oblivious, and they're just little cogs in whatever other machinations that the real people are sort of like.
Well, he apparently lives on the street in like next to an outhouse type structure.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely, just is down and out and doesn't, he's part of that world. As far as like, I was always intrigued also by his costuming, because it's like, what's he doing in that outfit up top? It's like,
that's his official messenger outfit.
Yeah, this is exactly like he associates that with. I'm not a beggar. I'm doing some important work here or whatever.
Dress for the job that you want.
Exactly.
I need a little bit for the musicians.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Charming
He's
little
just
bird.
trying to survive.
Yep. It seems like a full orchestra at the climax. Anyway. So as usual, I go a little overboard here, but I think her name was Jeanette.
Jeanette, the character.
She was hysterical. Yes. Yeah.
Well, the one on the top was the one that turned him into a killer, according to him, because he saved her. He found her a derelict on the street or laying on the street, and she
passes out, I believe, as he's
nurses her back to health, and
and then he discovers that she is
and then she just runs out.
A vulgar prostitute. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost like a little curtain was raised. Like, ladies and gentlemen, the Madonna horror complex.
Exactly.
And scene.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're a serial killer.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, then the woman in the bottom, and
that's just pure comic relief.
Yeah, she was hysterical. Yeah, she was something.
Also, and this is a good point. I want to point out that this is another that court set where they're interviewing all of the models is again like what? That's a pure studio, Ulmer studio creation where things are like really like there's a lot of space around everything. There's lots of shadows being cast by it. And I also want to point out how great it was that when he does his final monologue of exposition, we get the flashback. We get to see him picking her up off the street. We get to see him drawing her as she's there in bed, right? In that scene, training her into Joan of Arc. You know, it's just great. I mean, this is PRC. You could just let John Carradine do a monologue.
Just tell the story. Yeah.
Right.
The only thing that
makes it visual, makes it really like, oh wow,
yeah.
Well, the only thing that made me feel like it was super low budget was the backdrop paintings. Were pretty obvious, but otherwise, like when they were down in the sewer, the lights glowing down the curved walls.
Do you have a picture of the painting that sets?
I do.
Undoing in motion, because
I want to mention, the woman in the bottom. They were bringing in all these artist models, and first they would put them up in the little witness stand thing, and introduce them. So you're a model? Yes. Okay. Yes. She's a model, Your Honor. Your Honor. And go. I have one question for you. Do you recognize who painted this painting?
Yeah, I like how they're not bringing art critics in. They're just bringing the models.
You could just, they could just walk in a line by it. You know? But no. Anyway, she was great. She had some definite personality, and she was thrown in there. And I think maybe she was Iris Adrian.
She was great.
It sounds like her name, but she was excellent.
Yeah, definitely not a French accent on her. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, between her and
very Bronx.
Very Bronx. Yeah.
All right, here's what you're asking for. So there's.
So I know I said the worst thing in this movie was the music, but that painting is the second worst thing in this movie. Bad. And it is one of those moments where you just have to suspend your disbelief and roll with it. Because
that's the one that's going to be in the. That's the one that was put in the Louvre, I think.
No. The one of Jeanette was going.
Jeanette was the Louvre. Yeah, we don't get to see the finished of that. That painting is so bad. And my very first thought as I was watching this again this afternoon was, unlike, say, the portrait of Dorian Gray, where you have that fantastic portrait that now hangs in the Art Institute of Chicago, you can go and see the actual painting that they created for that film. It's there in the Art Institute of Chicago's permanent collection. I'm willing to bet this is nowhere. This painting. This is in no private nor public collection anywhere in the Western world, because that is just what? And then also, if you know anything about art history, you're like, okay, in the 1830s, is that when this is nominally set? It's like, no.
It looks more like a 1960s poster for a Roger Corman film.
Right? Doesn't look like the cover of a pulp novel from the early 60s.
They keep talking about the remarkable background, you know.
Yeah. It's wonderfully bad.
Yeah.
And it just adds a little bit. Right. It's the classic curse of fictional artists. in movies where the art is often. There's one film I saw years ago called I Heard the Mermaid Singing, where they sidestepped this by having the brilliant painting that someone had done just be this big panel of like white light. Right? And I remember seeing that and thinking like, yes, that's how you avoid the fact that all of these characters in this movie are claiming, look at this amazing painting, whereas you and the audience are thinking like, that's not amazing on any level. Anyway, I had to like, I'm glad you had a picture of it, Jeff, because I very much wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Porkiston.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, anyway. Doesn't speak volumes about his artistic ability, although Stossel seems to sell them right and left.
Yeah. You were talking about Mimi Roberts. It is Iris Adrian. And I know her from one of my favorite movies, Freaky Friday, the original Freaky Friday.
Oh, okay.
She played a lady on the bus who is like, what's going on with you, Jodie Foster?
You remember Freaky Friday, the lady on the bus? You remember that, right?
Well,
making snappy comments.
But I was like, I've seen her before, and
that's amazing that you recognized her. That I never in a million years.
I love that movie.
Wow.
Well, she has a face which I probably recognized from tons of. She's been like in a million of things. And so I'm probably like, gosh, it looks really familiar. But going back to seeing it Freaky Friday.
Many a lady on many a bus in a long career.
So her bio starts with her nicknames: Sugar, Pepper, Pearl, Bunny, Dottie, Ruby, Ginger, Sunny, Goldie, Bubbles.
Yeah, she is pretty amazing.
Wow. I hope that's also her filmography. That should be every character she plays. That's an amazing list.
She was in some great Disney's. Herbie Goes Bananas, The Shaggy DA.
There you go.
Apple Dumpling Gang.
The Apple Dumpling Gang. Why did you say so?
I told you guys.
She was in The Odd Couple.
Yeah, she was in The Odd Couple. Yeah, I know. Make fun of it as you will. I know it's not the sophisticated. It's not the sophisticated as Freaky Friday, but
I know that's true. None of those. Freaky Friday is miles ahead of
yes.
Of those. Yep.
Okay.
That movie.
So here's something that I need to. Let's see. Oh well, I'm trying to think of how do we go through this here. So here's where we're. He's painting her. Now I gotta say, am I missing something here? Because my understanding of physics and mirrors is if I could see her eyes, she could see my eyes.
No, you could angle it in such a way that works. She's only able to see herself, and he's standing at an oblique angle to her, and can see her. But it doesn't matter because he's just going to get frustrated that he can't sit up straight and completely blow the whole reason why he has created this elaborate setup.
And it busted him.
And that's also a nice touch because that's an absolute artist thing to do. Where the artist, like he's literally trying to not get caught, and then he's just like, "Oh my God, you can't! Oh, fine, I'll come out and pose you." It's so funny.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, we had the double mirror thing. And here's a couple of stranglings.
Couple of the stranglings.
I believe. Well, the top one is Sonia Sorrell, and the bottom one is Francine, I think.
Yeah, Carradine looks great in this. He looks like he'd step right into impromptu.
Well, and he had this way of
Grant,
charging across the room with his.
Yeah.
With his
I think the
arms
bottom one is Jeanette, but I'm not sure.
That could be.
It's not Francine. Yeah.
From that one, it doesn't quite look like.
No, that's Jeanette. That's the first. Yeah.
When he's telling the
money
story.
at him.
Yeah.
So there's two things I wanted to talk about here that we're going long, but this is good stuff, I think. The cinematography and the set design. So I love this shot where the three women are about to walk home after dark, and down at the end of this, it's kind of hard to see, but down at the end of this, John Carradine is just coming out around that lamp post. And I just think it's such a great shot, and it gives depth where it wasn't a huge set, It's just and then later on, I think it's sort of apropos where they have their conversation and they part. This warning poster is right behind them.
Yeah. No, it's great. They're all terrified of Bluebeard, and then they literally run into Bluebeard
and make a date with Bluebeard.
Make a date
right.
No, that's a great scene.
The bottom shot I like because it just shows so much depth. I mean, back through the curtain, you've got curtains, it goes back through into another room. There's a candle lit in the back of the other room. It's just, I just find it interesting. And also, I think it's something I've noticed, but it's something that I like is a lot of times when you add stairs or multiple levels to a small set, it feels it changes a lot of things. I don't know. There's a lot of running up and down stairs.
No, remember when we were talking about at Midnight I'll Take Your Soul. Yeah, Coffin Joe, and that the bar scene, right? The way that they had that set up so that you gain so much out of that tiny space by having the entrance to that bar be at the top of those stairs. Right? Yeah.
Oh, and like when they're having, and the Marte and Gaston are having their conversation about doing this final painting, Carradine walks up and down the stairs, and so much is happening from different heights and shots from above and below, and he's almost pacing, but it's up and down the stairs, and that was great. It was great.
Blocked really well. Again, Ulmer, the genius of Ulmer is how much he's able to do with so little.
Well, and here's another one that I just
gosh,
oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, the thing with the puppets hanging, the shadows of the puppets. So
hanging puppets, I found disturbing.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole
this
studio,
is a really great shot. Yeah,
the whole studio is beautiful, and how they use it in the scene. You know, you walk in, the lights streaming in through these huge windows, you know, and then the puppets are there, and it's absolutely.
I ran out of shots I could use that. I didn't run out of them. I just went, crap, I already got like 20 pictures. So,
no, it's great. And you see
when he's in his studio, there's almost always a puppet in the background. He's holding it. It's on the mantle behind him.
And the way that they're hanging there as if they're hanged people.
Right.
Strangle that. And then to make that during his monologue, where he actually literally snaps a puppet's head off to underscore that all of these women have become, you know, until Lucille somehow breaks the spell, have become nothing but puppets to him. Have become,
so the picture at the top,
I've literally dehumanized, you know.
The picture at the top, I felt like these are the women he's watching this conversation. And in the bottom one where he's on next to the stair railing, and the shadows they're hanging, it's more like he's haunted by all the people.
And he's looking at his hand. He's looking at his hand.
And I was making fun of the fact that this has very little to do with the actual Bluebeard legend at the beginning of the episode, but in point of fact, what was in Bluebeard's room in which his wife could not go into? What was actually in the secret room? Does anyone remember?
No, I don't.
Blood?
No, the heads, the women he had dispensed with. And so this is very subtly, if you know the story, the actual Bluebeard story, visually Ulmer is like he's doing this visual allusion to the actual Bluebeard thing. It's like, well, look what he's surrounded by. He's also, just as Bluebeard has his room in Gaston's studio, he's surrounded by these bodies, you know, these puppet heads.
Right. And he said, you know, he couldn't kill the puppets. I mean, so it was like, he could break them. So you're absolutely right. They like represent these things, and it wasn't enough for him.
It's very clever.
So there's
I didn't put that together at all. Thank you.
Well, I literally just put it together now, looking at this still, so I can't take too much credit. It just came to me like, that's actually an allusion to the whole notion of what Bluebeard is actually about. It's great.
Interesting.
Another scene that I really like, I don't know if you have a photo, is at the similar to what you were talking about when they first see Carradine and he's walking down in the light where the three women are waiting out. You only see a shadow. When at the funeral, when Lucille is standing there and she kind of senses something, she turns around and you see him in the shadow. I thought that was a really good shot too. And then he steps into the light.
I think the camera moves, doesn't it? It slowly moves off her just to his silhouette,
to his shadow.
That's where he is. It's not a cut. It's like an actual camera movement. It's great.
So we need to talk a little bit about Ulmer. And we kind of skipped over talking about the director. We've brought him up several times. Gregory, you had something there you wanted to recommend?
For anybody who wants to do a deep dive into Edgar G. Ulmer's life and career, there's a great book by Noah Eisenberg. This is it right here, called A Filmmaker at the Margins, Edgar G. Ulmer, Noah Eisenberg, who he also wrote a very good book about the history of the making of Casablanca. It's an excellent biography. It shows Ulmer's resilience. Famously, Ulmer ran off with the daughter of a Universal executive after he made The Black Cat in 1934, and he was pretty much blackballed from any of the major studios.
The fiance of a
fiance, yes,
or no, the wife of
the
the nephew of
the
Lemley.
nephew.
Yeah, that was it.
Lemley, and happily they were married for decades.
Yeah.
It was a true love match. Unhappily, he never had a chance to make an A-list film ever again. But he
big a hit as the Black Cat was. That was the last Universal film he made, I think.
Yeah, no, he was not. He was not allowed, and he did it. But he just did. He worked for all the Poverty Row studios. He made a lot of Yiddish films in Yiddish.
Made a lot of films overseas as well.
He made a lot of science. He made when the 50s roll around, he makes science fiction movies. He was a filmmaker who was just going to make movies no matter what. And some of them are great, and even the ones that aren't great are interesting.
Right. So he ended up being, so he gets a contract with PRC in 1943 after directing what was a big budget for PRC called Jive Junction, which I saw on his list. It looks interesting. He did musicals. There's very few genres that he didn't somehow dip into over his career. According to the short little bit I read, he became the company's #1 director, and in the end, he ended up being sort of their head of production and overseeing production of other directors, aiding the president of the company and planning out the production schedule, etc. And he described himself as the Frank Capra of PRC. But I also read that he had offers to go back to studios and he didn't want to do it. And when you think about it here, nobody was looking over his shoulder telling him he could do something or not do it.
Exactly.
It's freedom.
Yeah, he found so much freedom with those small budgets, and then he makes literally every list of the top 10 film noirs that's ever going to appear is going to have Detour on it, which was still again famously made in 6 days, right? And you were saying earlier that this film was made in there's differing opinions, but officially it was like 19 days. I feel like that's probably more accurate.
And I didn't know. Yeah. So this was Gregory Mank was talking about. He said he got access to the PRC records.
Yeah.
And that it was scheduled for 12 days and filmed in 19 days.
Yeah.
And I forget, I had written it down. The original budget was about $100,000 and it went, or 108, something like that. It ended up costing $167,000, which is a lot, I think, for PRC in 1944.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that now so I don't misquote it. 108,000 was the original budget and 167.5. It was also on the record that Carradine made 9,333 for this. Gene Parker made 5,850. Ulmer was paid $1,500 for directing plus another $350 for the story. But I'm assuming he was on salary if he had a contract with him.
Probably. Yeah.
So
that's just a basic fee, probably.
Anyway, I thought all that stuff is interesting and how he just kind of ends up. That's his thing,
Yeah.
I think it's also says a lot about his artistic style because I believe he was a set director and originally set designer and studied architecture and supposedly philosophy. And you can see design work it's so many of his shots. It's beautiful.
It's not a horror movie, but Strange Illusion is the other sort of great Ulmer film from right around this same time, which I recommend checking out.
I think Sonia Sorrell is in that one too. He also was he was like a set designer for Metropolis.
Supposedly.
Okay.
Supposedly.
Oh, supposedly. Okay.
Supposedly. There's some controversy about how much he inflated his actual
resume
in doing that. But
because it was also, didn't he also say that about M? Or I feel like that maybe I was thinking maybe that's what
he did. He did.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Uh-huh.
He did. He did.
W supposedly did all these amazing. Yeah, but no
we
one
didn't say that he wasn't involved.
Right.
But there's some people said well, he kind of inflated what he actually did.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you if you'd worked on Metropolis and M?
Right.
Why wouldn't you then inflate your own part?
Well,
the
other person I want to mention is the cinematographer who was Eugene Shifton, but it doesn't list him as a cinematographer. It lists him as a production designer in the movie's credits because he was not a member of the union.
That explains that.
And so they listed a camera operator as the director of photography. But we've talked about Shifton. He's a fairly famous guy. He was also cinematographer for Eyes Without a Face. And he developed kind of a weird thing. And I'm thinking maybe that whole mirror setup kind of fits into that. I knew this when we did Eyes Without a Face, but I don't remember the exact details. So I'm checking it out. So yeah, he came over from Germany as well. So, how long had he been here? In 1944, 40.
That's right. That when you started talking about that reminded me, and I looked it up, the Shifton process.
Yeah. He invented the Shifton process, a special effects technique that employed mirrors to insert actors in miniature sets. And one of the first uses was for Metropolis. Technique was widely used throughout the first half of the 20th century until it was supplanted by traveling matte and blue screen techniques. And I believe he got an Oscar for that, for technical merit or something.
Sure.
And I had to look it up. There's actually, if you search it, there's a diagram of how the mirrors work and stuff. But anyway, cool stuff. So I thought it was cool he was in here. And somewhere it says something about him and Ulmer. He didn't receive proper screen credit for many of the films he photographed. Ulmer said it was because he wasn't on the American Society of Cinematographers, or wasn't in it, and wasn't allowed to take screen credit.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I just wanted to mention. So we had a couple of really, you get these guys working on these movies, but there's a couple of geniuses involved in the look and the
absolutely
design and the filming of this movie.
That's why we're talking about it and not,
All right.
Yeah,
way longer than how long the movie is. So what do we anything we want to that we left out that anybody wanted to mention?
No, just if you're an Ulmer completist, you have not completed your Ulmering until you've seen Bluebeard. And frankly, I don't know if such a creature as a John Carradine completist exists. Probably, but you absolutely need to see this if you are a John Carradine completist.
Yeah,
that strikes me as a lifelong goal.
Excuse me. One of his best performances for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of the other ones we mentioned, like Grapes of Wrath, and I forget what else we mentioned.
Stagecoach.
Very
good in Stagecoach. Yeah. In fact,
those
in the flashback,
big.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead. In the flashback scene, the hat that he was wearing reminded me of the one he wore in Stagecoach.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that hat, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen that before.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wind this up and move on to feedback. That's okay with everybody.
Yep.
We have a few pieces of feedback, and I have to ask. Something I've been wondering about will come out when I read this. So, a friend of the show's, Andy L, commented, "I'm one episode away from completing Gogol, a 2017 Russian folk horror series set in 1829. Now, I looked a little further. It was a trilogy of movies in Russia, but here you can watch it as an 8-episode series that says that was put together in 2019. While there's some unnecessary gratuitous nudity in the first episode and some relevant nudity in episode 4, I still think it's a well done show and interesting to watch a series from Russia. Even if I'm not a big fan of Putin, I don't ban the whole country. That's nice. 8 1-hour episodes in all. I put a note in here. We did Classic Era in episode 67. We did V,
which is such a great movie.
It is based on a Gogol work.
Very good movie. Yes.
Oh, so cool.
So I've been trying to pump this. Doc loves V, and I sent him this.
V is so good.
And I'm thinking somebody else mentioned this series to me before, and I probably forgot. But I just binged it. It's on Tubi, and it's on Amazon. And on Amazon, if you buy all 8 episodes, it's $6.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Cinematheque, did a whole witch series a few years ago, and V was one of the films, and I'd never seen it, so I got to see it on the big screen for the first time.
Oh, wow.
It was just like instant fan of that movie.
Well, this is based. You can see traces of his stories in here.
Yeah.
In these episodes, and one of I think it's episode 6 is called V, where we meet the demon V.
Interesting.
The actual original Gogol story is very different from the movie. I mean, not completely different, but it's much more expansive than the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and in this episode, it's way different from the movie, but I can see the threads of what's going on.
Right.
So
That's
cool. I thought was very cool. It makes me want to go back and read. I read a couple of stories when we did the episode. I need to go back and read the rest of that collection, which I can't remember. Stories from Dananka or something like that. Or does that ring a bell? Anybody?
I'll have to re-listen to that because that sounds interesting.
Anyway, thank you, Andy L. I watched it and I friggin' loved it.
Yay!
Thought it was great. Thought it was absolutely great.
Something else I have to add to my ever-growing list of stuff to watch.
Episode 135, Matango. From Guy Grip. 9634. Gregory, could you take that one?
Yes. Am I reading all 4 of these little...
they're just, it's like the paragraphs in.
My mom and I love this movie. I was the first one to see it at 3 years old on its first piece of TV, August 1965. I remember it was 7:30 p.m. Sunday, and my mom was explaining it to me. When the guy got caught in the jungle, I remember a girl getting carried away. Wow, I was the first to see it. Then I saw it alone at 8 years old. The again with my mom at 9 after Pop Gear Go-Go Mania 1965 was on. Then the movie was shown in its full 2 hours. What a great movie. So glad Daphne loves this movie. It is a masterpiece. She is such a great, classy lady. Anyone who has her as a friend should cherish her. Oh, it's true. She is. She is in fact likable as hell.
Oh,
yes. So we can attest to that. In fact, I
should go back and
I will sign a sworn affidavit to that effect. Yeah.
I should go back and comment on Matango because, which I don't think I ever did, but when this was Attack of the Mushroom People, it played about every 6 weeks on a local UHF channel.
Oh, really?
When I was a kid, and it haunted me, and it was years and years before I finally figured out what it was. Saw it again.
It's all about shrooms, man. It's all about the shrooms.
It might be the best, truly, except for kaiju. It might be one of the very best Japanese horror movies ever because it's just so disturbing in so many ways.
Well, and I don't understand why. I tried to find Blu-rays of it, and I can find multiple DVDs, but I cannot find a Blu-ray formatted one.
Well, who do we talk to about that?
I don't know.
Gregory, write a stern letter
I know.
to somebody.
Anything about Blu-rays, I think has to be a stern email coming from Jeff Mohr.
From Jeff, okay. Jeff.
I mean, he is
from the Jeff Mohr Institute of Blu-ray History on official letterhead, with a embossed stamp.
Well, I appreciate it, Guy Grip, and
thanks, Guy Grip.
I apologize if I changed anything. That his comments come all caps, and they sound to me like maybe he vocal translated them, voice recognition, because sometimes their syntax is kind of messed up. So I kind of changed it to what I thought was what he meant in a couple places. So
Well, if it turns out he doesn't, it didn't mean so glad Daphne loves this movie. We don't need to know the truth. That's
right. That part was true. That part was true. That was true. And then from our last episode, 178, Curse of the Crimson Altar, aka the Crimson Cult, which is what I always knew it as. Mikey, you'll take the first one from Emulus 79.
Emulus 79 says this film looks like it was written by Thelemite perverts. I think I mispronounced it. It might be Thelemite perverts.
I don't even know what that is.
Lovecraft
must have
been writhing in his grave. I'm going to read the next one as well.
Sure.
From our friend Jose, he says, interestingly, or perhaps not, I've seen more stills from this one than read reviews, but I've never seen it. And then he says something about good to see some person named Mikey Z again. And happy birthday. Well, thank you, Jose. Thank you very much. Last week was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mikey.
And the episode premiered on my birthday. I thought it was something you DOH guys were doing, giving me a nice birthday present, but I can't be that conceited. So,
hey, I'm all about schedules. Ask Daphne.
Runs a good ship. That's how stuff gets done.
Oh, Lordy. All right.
And then read the last one here.
Daphne, you want to take Robert Baker there?
Sure. Let me get. I was looking up Thelemite, so sorry.
Yeah, I was too, and I didn't come up with anything.
That's funny, Daphne. I was looking at perverts.
Oh, we'll get there somehow. Robert
Actually,
Baker.
I have a definition of Thelemites.
Okay.
One who does as he pleases, especially libertine.
Oh, right. That's the Thelemite. Yeah, it's the whole Aleister Crowley do what thou wilt.
Okay, we were mispronouncing it. No wonder why we didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. Once again, our viewers learn us something.
Yes, educating us. Yes.
Yeah, I like it. Thelemite. Okay.
Do what thou wilt. The whole of the law.
Robert Baker. This is one strange movie, even for a Lovecraft adaptation, but I enjoy watching it. Always get a kick out of the dream sequences with the cult. So bizarre. But when Karloff, Lee, and Steele are in the same movie, you really can't miss it. Yes, definitely one of my cozy go-to movies. Yay.
I was going to comment on this episode as well, but I too have never seen The Curse of the Crimson Altar, and I thought for a change, I'm going to actually watch the movie before I make a comment.
Oh, first?
Okay.
I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, Karloff is awesome.
Well, it was just after listening to the episode, I thought, oh, that one. I mean, sometimes they'll be like, trust me, after you guys talked about To the Devil a Daughter, I was like, maybe I'm not going to swing with that. But this one, I was like, oh, okay, sure. Barbara Steele in green makeup,
yes,
body makeup. All right, I'm there.
Barbara Steele.
After we talk about the Devil, oh, gotcha.
Right. Which I've also never seen, and again, it's one of those things where it's like it was the last Hammer. You should really see it, and I,
Well, the next,
yeah. Anyway, sometimes you listen to an episode and you're just sort of like, no, maybe I won't watch that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I try to find something that's interesting for people, but the Guy Grip, whoever that is, in the next 70s, I'll be reading a comment from Guy Grip, kind of ripping us a new one for bashing Cry of the Banshee.
Well, there's got to be someone that
perennial
lets us. I mean,
we all
have our
movie, but
and I remember listening to that episode early on, the Cry of the Banshee episode. Also a movie I've never seen. So there you go.
We didn't care for it. That's all I really remember about it. But that's okay. If I watch it again, I might think something different. Plenty of ways to stay in touch. So we love our feedback. Please send feedback to feedback@gruesomemagazine.com, or you can leave comments directly on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube channel. Check us out on our Facebook group, Gruesome Magazine's H&R and DOH Podcasts Facebook group, and other people can make comments there as well or bring up subjects. We appreciate it. Also, we have a Patreon thing. I always forget this for some reason on 70s. We do have Patreon folks, and one of the things you get for Patreon is you get Decades of Horror 1 to 2 days after it's recorded instead of waiting for the publication date, which if we did shows on schedule would be almost 2 weeks. But when we don't, it's not that far. But also, we are doing a series of episodes on Kolchak the Night Stalker, one of our episodes covering each episode of that series, and those are Patreon only. So
Kolchak is streaming on Peacock.
Yeah, it's on Peacock. It's we found it some other place. It's also on we found it on archive.org. It's also on Daily Motion, but we discovered that the Daily Motion ones were the ones that were trimmed for syndication. Right. So they're like 8 minutes shorter than the ones. Or you can buy the Kino Lorber.
Buy the Blu-ray set. Don't worry about it, folks. Get all the extras on that and be cold.
Which is a great companion to the Kino Lorber Blu-rays of the movie The Night Stalker and The Night Strangler. Okay.
And you can also get them at the library lots of time too.
As well. So
I will add that to my list.
That's it for this episode, but every 2 weeks we'll focus on a specific film released between 1920 and 1969. Next up, chosen by Doc, is kind of a special one for us. We're doing The Lost Continent, Hammer film from 1968. It features, according to the poster at least, blood beast, torture pits, giant jaw-snapping mollusks, a floating death ship, crazed kelp monsters, and fiery destruction.
All right,
yes, right one of those posters. See this.
Right off the bat, I don't believe mollusks have jaws. I'm just going to go there and just like,
these are special mollusks.
No.
There you are, sciencing again.
Sorry.
We will, right now we're scheduled to be joined by Richard Clementson, the publisher, editor of Little Shop of Horrors, the Journal of Classic British Horror Films. And indeed, he is the one who did the commentary for the movie for the Scream Factory Blu-ray. Bill Mulligan from Decades of Horror, the 1970s, 1980s will also be joining us. So we'll have a full house. But we've been trying to set this up for about 6 months, and it's now scheduled for next Sunday. Whatever that means. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Boy, have we gone long. There was a lot to talk about here. I appreciate everybody's time. I also appreciate Mikey and Gregory.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
Got to go order the Edgar Ulmer book now.
I will always answer to the call, even if when you finally do the swarm, everyone calls in sick.
Again, I did not mention the name of that film. Your Honor, I want it on the record that I did not mention that film. Please.
So that would be on 70s, but Chad picked it once, and we all three of us went, oh man. And he went,
again, for the record, I did not mention that.
So anyway.
I'm doing my best Bill Clinton here. I did not mention that film.
I did not talk about the swarm.
Hey, good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. It was
good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Gruesome Magazine.